I never imagined that a simple business meeting could unravel so fast, but as soon as I stepped into that room, I felt the air shift. The sterile scent of the office mixed with the faint hum of the air conditioner felt colder than usual, almost like a warning I chose to ignore. My heart pounded harder than it should have for what was supposed to be a routine interview. The first handshake was firm but forced, and I caught a glimpse of a smirk that didn't quite reach the person's eyes. It was subtle, but something about it made me pause for a split second. I told myself it was just nerves, or maybe my imagination playing tricks, but that moment planted a seed of doubt I couldn't shake. Sitting down, I tried to focus on the questions, but their tone was sharp, almost accusatory. The way they asked about my past work felt less about my skills and more like they were fishing for weaknesses. I answered cautiously, feeling like every word could be twisted or used against me. Then came the other person in the room, the silent observer whose eyes didn't miss a thing. They leaned back in their chair, arms crossed, watching me like a hawk. The silence stretched uncomfortably, making me wonder if I was being tested or judged unfairly. At one point, a question caught me off guard, something irrelevant to the job but personal, probing into my private life. My instincts screamed that this wasn't a normal interview, but I forced a smile and answered anyway. The tension in the room thickened, and I could feel the weight of their gaze. Suddenly, a phone buzzed quietly on the table, breaking the silence. The person with the smirk glanced at it briefly, then turned back to me with an unsettling grin. It felt like they were sharing a secret I wasn't part of, and that isolation hit me hard. I tried to regain control by asking about the company's culture and values, hoping to steer the conversation back to safer ground. But their answers were vague, almost evasive, as if they were hiding something. The more I pressed, the colder their responses became. As the meeting dragged on, I noticed small signs, furtive glances exchanged, barely audible whispers when they thought I wasn't looking. The room felt like a stage where a play was unfolding, and I was the unwitting lead in a drama I didn't understand. Then came the moment that shattered everything, a sudden accusation about my previous employer, something baseless but delivered with such conviction that my stomach dropped. I stammered to defend myself, but they didn't seem interested in the truth, only in painting me as untrustworthy. I realized then that this meeting wasn't about hiring or assessing skills. It was a calculated move to break me down, to test my limits, and see how far they could push. The realization hit like a punch to the gut, leaving me reeling inside the cold, impersonal room. Trying not to lose my composure, I reminded myself why I was there, to prove my worth, not to fall prey to their games. But the doubt that had crept in earlier now clawed at my mind, whispering that maybe I had misjudged them, or worse, that they had already misjudged me beyond repair. I glanced at the clock on the wall, willing time to speed up, to end this ordeal. Every second felt stretched and heavy, like the weight of their silent scrutiny was pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The person with the smirk suddenly leaned forward, voice low and chilling, suggesting that maybe my past was more complicated than I let on. Their words were coated with insinuation, designed to unsettle me, to make me question my own narrative. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to snap back. Instead, I took a deep breath and answered calmly, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing me falter. But inside, the storm was raging, an internal battle between fear and resolve. The silent observer finally spoke, their tone neutral but piercing, asking if I was sure about my references. It felt like a challenge, a test of my honesty that suddenly made the room feel like a courtroom instead of a place for opportunity. I nodded firmly, asserting that my references were reliable and that I stood by my record. But their eyes held a skepticism that cut deeper than any accusation, making me feel like I was standing on shaky ground, vulnerable and exposed. The conversation spiraled into a back and forth where every answer I gave was met with doubt, every explanation twisted into suspicion. The trust I had hoped to build was crumbling, replaced by a cold, grinding tension that filled the space between us. I caught myself glancing at the door, imagining a way out, a chance to escape this suffocating atmosphere. But I knew leaving wasn't an option, not yet. I had to see it through, no matter how brutal it became. Then, out of nowhere, a comment about loyalty hit me like a thunderclap. They questioned if I really belonged in their team, insinuating that my values were misaligned without giving me a chance to explain. That was the moment I understood how deeply broken their trust truly was. I felt a surge of frustration and hurt, but also a strange clarity. This wasn't a meeting about my qualifications, it was a battlefield where trust was weaponized and I was the target. The realization stung, but it also sparked a fire within me. The rest of the meeting blurred into a series of tense exchanges, each one chipping away at the thin veneer of professionalism. I could see the masks slipping, the polite facade cracking to reveal something harsher beneath. When it finally ended, I barely recognized myself in the reflection of the glass wall as I stepped outside. The city looked the same, but inside, everything felt altered. The trust I once took for granted had been shattered in that room, leaving behind a raw, uneasy silence. Walking away, I couldn't help but replay every moment, every look, every word. The meeting had been a test, yes, but one I hadn't expected, one that taught me how fragile trust really is and how quickly it can be weaponized against you. Even now, days later, the echoes of that room haunt me. The question isn't just about whether I could trust them, but whether I can trust anyone who wears a smile that hides a smirk. And maybe, just maybe, that's the hardest lesson of all. But the story doesn't end there, because after that meeting, I knew I had to dig deeper, not just into their intentions, but into my own instincts and boundaries. Trust isn't something given lightly anymore. It has to be earned, guarded fiercely. So here I am, sharing this with you, hoping someone else might recognize the signs I missed. Maybe together, we can figure out how to navigate the tangled web of trust and suspicion that life throws at us without losing ourselves in the process. I'm still processing, still unsettled, but also strangely empowered. Because if there's one thing that meeting taught me, it's that trust issues aren't just a weakness, they're a shield, a survival tool in a world that's often more complicated than it seems. And with that, I'm left wondering what comes next. How do you rebuild trust once it's broken? Who do you turn to when the people who are supposed to believe in you start to doubt? These are questions I'm still searching for answers to, step by uncertain step. The meeting that went wrong wasn't just a bad day or a failed interview, it was a turning point. A moment where the fragile foundations of trust cracked wide open, forcing me to confront fears I didn't know I had and to rethink the way I connect with others. And so I keep moving forward, wary but hopeful, learning to read the subtle signs, trusting my gut more than ever before, and holding on to the belief that trust, while fragile, can sometimes be rebuilt stronger than before. This isn't the end of the story, far from it. It's just the beginning of a much longer journey, one where every interaction, every handshake, every word carries weight. And I'm learning to navigate this new reality, one cautious step at a time. Thanks for listening. If you've ever been through something similar, I'd love to hear your story too. Because maybe sharing these moments is the first step toward healing and understanding the complex dance of trust in our lives.